Welcome to Rams Up, a Los Angeles Rams podcast. We are a proud member of the Pigskin Podcast Network. We cover other SoCal sports news of interest, but we're mostly about your Los Angeles Rams. I'm your host, Mark. Let's get to it. Greetings, Ram fans. Welcome back to Rams Up, your Los Angeles Rams podcast. This is episode 12 of season 2. This is our Monday morning drop. We are going to have a Thursday drop as well. My special assistant is going to join me to educate us about some players he loves in the NFL draft. And don't forget, next week, we have our draft roundtable with Paul Walia and Tom Courts, discussing all things NFL draft, especially with respect to the Rams. That should be a blast. This episode, I am going to share with you a conversation between the host of the 49ers Rush podcast, John Chapman, and one of my regular guests, Tom Courts. Tom is going to try to explain to the 49er faithful how the Rams system works, how Les Snead's strategy works, and why it can be successful. How the Rams' approach to trading away picks and having such a top-heavy roster, how can that be a path to success, and most importantly, a sustainable strategy to success over the long term? Can the Rams continue to put a good product on the field year after year after year with this strategy? So Tom's going to lay it all out for everybody, making the argument that the Rams will continue to be successful over the objections of many, I'm sure. But that's going to be fun, and I want to thank John for letting us share that on our podcast. Nice to have some cooperation with our rivals in the NFC West. Get some Ram notes out of the way here before we get to that. Matt Gay and Trevin Howard have both signed their free agent tenders, so both of them are back for sure. The Rams have released cornerback Kareem Orr, which just makes it more evident to me that the Rams are going to go cornerback in this draft, if not once, twice. Right now they're rolling with Jalen Ramsey, David Long, Grant Haley, who I actually like, Robert Rochelle, and Tyler Hall. So there are still some veterans out there on the market. Stephon Gilmore is not one of them, but I suspect the Rams are going to draft at least one cornerback. I would make a pretty heavy wager on that, but Les Snead, very hard to predict what he's going to do. This seems very obvious to me, though. And back to Gilmore, he signed a 2-year deal with the Colts, $23 million, $14 million guaranteed. The Rams were waiting till after the draft to sign him, perhaps, because at that point he would not be part of the comp pick calculations. If they had signed him now, it would have cost the Rams likely a 5th-round comp pick. But Gilmore wasn't willing to wait. On with the Colts. Good team. He's going to help them a lot. Rams are still in the mix for Tyrann Mathieu, apparently, as well as OBJ. Mathieu, that signing would definitely occur after the draft, but there will be other suitors still. I'm not convinced the Rams need Mathieu. I mean, they need a cornerback is what they need, but I'm not going to say no to the Honey Badger. Les Snead knows what he's doing. I wanted to bounce over to NBA basketball. Haven't done that in a while. I think it's worth mentioning. A lot of talk about a mid-season basketball tournament. Their playing games have been so exciting and so successful. Fans love it. And it got a lot of people thinking, why don't we do a mid-season one-and-done basketball tournament? And the more I think about it, I think it would be really exciting. How would it work? So you take the 2 conference leaders, they get a bye. The other 28 teams play in, one and done, leaving 14 plus the other 2, that's 16, and then you just got March Madness all over again, one and done. All these games would be played at one place, so you could reseed after each round if you wanted. And when do you hold it? Right after the Super Bowl. You could actually start it the Saturday before the Super Bowl, the 14 games, and then every other day after that, Monday, Wednesday, Friday type of thing. What a spectacle that would be. Opening games on big cash payout to the winner, and then they get playoff points towards making the playoffs. I'm not going to work through those details. That could be the complicated part of it, but there's a cash earning for the players, and then it eases their path to the playoffs if you win it, or maybe even the runner-up as well. So that's really exciting to me. I'd love to see it. A one-and-done February madness for the NBA. I'd be watching that for sure. So we'll be back in a minute. We are going to have that discussion between John Chapman of the 49er Rush podcast and our own Tom Courts. The NBA playoffs means next level basketball. Get in on the first round of action with DraftKings Sportsbook. At DraftKings Sportsbook, all DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on NBA hoops with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game during the first round of the playoffs and get $150 in free bets instantly. That's promo code TPPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Now we're going to get into that discussion between John Chapman of the 49ers Rush podcast and our own Tom Courts. Hope you enjoy it.
All right. Welcome to another edition of the 49ers Rush podcast. I'm your host, as always, John Chapman, and I have a wonderful guest with me today. And y'all are in for a treat. It's a peek behind enemy lines with Tom Courts of the Rams beat. Tom, how's your day going, man?
Hey, great, man. Thanks for having me. Any day we're talking Rams Niners it's a good day, right? I mean, we're in the middle of the off season and the dog days leading up to the draft. It's exciting, but boy, we get a chance to talk to each other about these great teams, and we're so lucky, right? We have this great window right in front of us, both teams, and the Rams got over the hump last year, and the Niners finally, so I love doing it. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm thankful that, we're not like the Seattles and Arizonas of the situation. Like we're sitting, it's just different. And the rivalry between these two teams, it could last for a very, very long time with the young coaches, the way these rosters are built and all those things. And that's going to be kind of the focus that we're going to do today, that we're going to focus on, is the difference between the 49ers and Rams and how they build their rosters. Are they sustainable moving on? And this whole pairing got started because Tom reached out to me. We were talking and I made a joke. I made a bad joke, which Tom didn't like. And I love it. So that's where we're going to start, because I compared, and stop me if I'm wrong here, I compared the Rams roster building to the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, the Jordan Belfort story, where like the first half of the movie, he gets away with everything and he's breaking the law and he's living this life of luxury. And then the second half of the movie, everything comes crashing to a halt. So Tom, man, take me to court and tell me why I am wrong and why this roster that the Rams keep trading is sustainable.
Yeah, so it's a different kind of a strategy, and I don't think they certainly don't take any credit for inventing it or maybe evolving it a little bit or maybe taking it to an extreme. But yeah, I'll just take you through the basics of the strategy. So the strategy is based upon the concept of being extremely top heavy and extremely bottom heavy. So they pay big money to the players at what they deem to be high leverage positions, and that's the key. is that there's positions that are high leverage positions, and then really limit compensation at what they deem to be the low leverage positions. So on each side of the ball, there's like 3 high leverage positions. So on defense, the 3 high leverage positions are defensive line, getting to the quarterback, right? Aaron Donald, A'Shawn Robinson, his backup. He's the guy that really put the kibosh in the middle there. Is that 3rd defensive lineman in the Super Bowl, did a great job. And of course, at edge, we have Leonard Floyd, pay a lot of money to. Doesn't, kind of an unsung hero on that line because of Aaron Donald. And then when Von Miller came over, the same thing. The edge was paying some big money. And then cornerback with Jalen Ramsey. So those are the 3 high leverage positions on defense. And of course, the other 2, the safety and inside linebacker, are low leverage positions where you have essentially entirely players on rookie deals. And then there's the one exception. Everybody's going to ask, well, what about Bobby Wagner? And, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. And this is a guy that they felt like, hey, we can get this great, fantastic player, leader, and stud for $9 million a year for a couple of years. Let's do it.
Yeah, and it's funny because my inbox blows up. Why can't we get Wagner? How come they can? And I had to tell people, like, dude grew up here. Like, he's a Southern California kid.
Yeah.
Like, this is going home for him at the end of his career. Like, it makes sense. Now, I would argue this too, because I love what you said about all the premier, top level, highest paid players that you guys have. There's not a lot of middle grade there. And this is probably the most common critique of the Rams, is that, man, if there's an injury or two, what happens?
Yeah.
Like, what do they do there?
Yeah. So then they just to finish up real quick on the offensive side, and then we'll dive into that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Obviously, on offense, there's quarterback, obviously everybody's high leverage position, Matthew Stafford, wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, sign Allen Robinson, maybe bring OBJ back. And then, of course, offensive tackle, which is another high leverage position for most teams as well. So Andrew Whitworth obviously was highly paid. Joe Noteboom got paid $13 million to replace him. Rob Havenstein is one of the stud right tackles in the league, and he makes $9 million. So, and then of course all the rest of the positions, interior offensive line, all rookie deal guys last year that started. Running back, all rookie deal guys. Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, Sonny Michel, et cetera. And then tight end, there's the exception with Higbee at about $8 million. And then there's, Munt, he's gone. Blanton, Bryce Hopkins, who had a big Super Bowl, guys like that. So there's really there's the haves and the have-nots, if you will, or you can call them the top heavy and the complementary players. There's a lot of names for them, but that's the structure of it. But just to address your question, the Rams have to stock up on guys that are on rookie deals that can contribute right away. That's the secret sauce, because it's easy to go out and trade away all your, first and second round draft picks. Yeah, that's what they've done. They traded away, they traded away their first round, for 2016 for Goff. They gave up 2 seconds and a third in 16, and then a first and a third in 17. Brandon Cooks, 2018, gave up their 2018 first round pick to the Patriots. 2019, even when they had a first round pick, albeit it was the 31st pick, they traded out of the first round to take a second and a third. And the Ramsey trade gave up the first round picks for 2020 and 2021. And Stafford, after that, 2022 and 2023, first round pick gone. And so that's what they do. But a lot of people would say, well, it's easy to trade all your picks away for a star and then pay him a ton of money. And I would agree with that. It's not that hard to do it, and you don't hit on it all the time. And Goff and Cooks were bad deals, right? But Ramsey and Stafford were great deals. So, that's the easy part. The hard part is the second part of the equation. In order to pay for those guys, you can't pay anyone else. Yeah. And you have to find a ton of guys that can contribute right away. And so, that's really the secret sauce. And they have a strategy for doing that. And they've done it, and they've been successful at doing it. I mean, last year, the Rams had 10 players on rookie deals that played over half the snaps. More than,
and they're
50%.
Not high-end draft picks either. And
they're all low draft picks.
Play.
They're all low. They're all third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round guys, right? And then they had another 10 players on rookie deals that played between 20% and 50% of the snaps. So that's 20 guys that played more than 20 snaps. And a lot of them were starters at those key positions or backups, or then you had your guys like Williams, who was starting at corner, and Jefferson, who was another receiver, even some of the guys that surround the studs at some of those high leverage positions. So obviously the draft is incredibly important, and stocking up on those late round picks is really key. And then selecting people that they don't have to have star potential. They don't have to have high ceilings. They just need to be solid. And have a byproduct of that is you saw the Rams second year in a row. They didn't go to the combine. They just focused
they don't even imagine like one of the worst jobs or needless jobs ever is like scouting your scouting department for the Rams. Yeah. And again, if you look at the draft this year, I think this is interesting because it not only backs up what you just said, but they're extending it again. They do not have one pick in the top 100. Now they have a lot of picks. They have a lot of picks.
8 picks.
They got 8 picks. They got 3 picks in the 6th round and 2 picks in the 7th round.
Third or fourth or fifth. And 5 of the 8 picks, this is the key, right? If you say you trade away the picks, a lot of those trades that I just rambled off for the last 5 years, and by the way, McVay has never made a first-round pick since he's been the coach of the Rams, since he's been a head coach. That's an interesting stat. I think a lot of people know that, but they also trade away. I didn't even mention some of the 4th rounders and 6th rounders that they gave up in some of those trades as well. So the key thing is to stock up on these late round picks in the draft. They really rely on comp picks. So
this is probably the biggest similarity between our two teams, the 49ers and Rams, because the 49ers are great at the comp pick equation. The Rams, you are getting 4 comp picks. The 49ers would have got 4, but we traded 1 away as well. But we also had the coaching hiring thing, which I think you guys did as well.
Yeah, we had
pick 104.
We got a 3rd rounder in this draft. Our 3rd round pick comes from Brad Holmes, who is an exec in the front office, being hired as the GM of the Lions.
So I got to ask you this question, and this scares the death out of me. Tom, like as a Rams podcaster, do you even like do draft like podcasts? Is that even like a thing?
It's so funny. Yeah. We go and look at all these mock drafts and try and get all these analysts, right? I mean, because there's so many great draft analysts and great draft podcasts. I mean, I try and listen to them all, and there's just love it. I can't get enough of it. But so rarely I have to go to the very end. Like yesterday, I was listening to one, and they were covering cornerbacks, which is one of our 2 big positions of need: cornerback to replace Darius Williams, and interior offensive line, right, to replace Corbett. So I'm trying to find out where are we going to get these guys in the And our 3rd round pick, it really isn't even a 3rd round pick. It's
104.
It's like the beginning of the 4th round because it's at the end, so far deep in the end of the 3rd. But so I have to go to the end of the podcast where everybody has their segment of sleepers, right? So I listen to the last 10 minutes of every draft. It's like, what are the sleepers? Maybe you can find some value late in the draft, and that's where we live.
And some of the kind of beef I get is, man, the 49ers don't even have a 1st rounder this year, man. It's hard to get excited for the draft. Well, we're picking 61. We've got 3 picks in the top 105. And I'm like, hey, man, it's different. Now, and I'm just going to put this up there. This is what Steven put out there. And he wants to say, okay, but who did the Rams lose this offseason? And does that make a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, they lose people every year. That's part of the system. They do. Part of the system, right? I mean, this year, we lost Darius Williams, Austin Corbett was a starter, Sebastian Joseph Day, who got hurt, but he at the beginning of the year he was Obo Okoronkwo. Those guys were 2 big studs before Von Miller on the edge before Von Miller got there. So they're used to losing players. That's part of it. That's the only way you get comp picks is that when you let guys on rookie deals walk. And it could be anybody, but for the Rams, it's mostly the rookie deal guys that they let them walk, and you get the comp picks. And then, of course, you can't. The other half of that is you can't sign guys to offset that, right?
But you don't have the money for that because you're attributing that to your top allocated players already,
right? Well, or we sign a guy like Allen Robinson, right, and he offset Von Miller walking in free agency, but it doesn't matter because you can only get 4 comp picks. Yep. And we already had 4, we had 5. So,
and what people don't know either, Bobby Wagner doesn't count because
right.
he wasn't a free agent. He was released. So that doesn't, that's excluded from the comp pick.
Right. There's 2 exclusions. There's the guys that free agents that are cut don't have an offset. And then the other thing, which everybody should get excited about all around the league, and a lot of people don't seem to know this. Everybody's, why aren't all these free agents, these existing free agents, like the Honey Badger, Matthew, and some of these other guys who are still out there that are great free agents, why aren't they being signed? Well, the reason is because if you sign them now, you get a comp pick offset. But the comp pick offset goes away after the draft. So the Monday after the draft, and you go sign any of those existing free agents whose contracts expired, no more comp pick offset. So right after the draft, that's why there's an enormous amount of activity around the remaining free agents.
Yeah, and the rounds of the free agency, you get all of your highly sought off players first with the big contracts. Then the second round is, all right, let's get our cheap guys to keep our books balanced. And then the third wave is after the draft, which you spoke of. There's still so many studs out there. Stephon Gilmore, Honey Badger, Will Fuller. Like every single position, there are quality players available. You just have to wait because, again, teams like the 49ers, teams like the Rams are very forward-looking with how they're going to, again, build their roster. And comp picks, both of our teams, and again, if you just look across the NFL, the Patriots have made a killing doing this. Last year was the one year where they kind of like threw that out the window, but they were back in it this year where they're letting players go. So I want to go back to this question that Steven had.
Yeah.
And in your very unbiased opinion, Tom.
My 100%.
Did the Rams roster improve, stay the same, or get worse this offseason so far?
So far, it's gotten worse. Because if you just go down the list and, quarterback is the same, running back's the same. We picked up Allen Robinson, but lost Robert Woods and Odell Beckham Jr. We lost, obviously, to injury for a lot of the year, even if we do re-sign him. So you could consider that a wash. I'm super excited about Allen Robinson as our most Rams fans. That tight end stayed the same, but the offensive line is the big difference to me. I mean, Joseph Noteboom, we have a ton of I paid him $13 million a year, and for 3 years, a ton of excitement and confidence in him. He showed up every time he had a chance, every time he was given the opportunity. So replacing Whitworth, who knows? And he's young. So and then we re-signed Brian Allen, but didn't replace Austin Corbett. It's a big deal, right? Didn't replace our right guard, and right now we have a backup center, Coleman Shelton, slated to replace him. So that's a big hole and a negative. And then on the defensive line was a wash. At edge, obviously Von Miller gone, right? So now and a lot of people say, oh, well, the Rams had, just as many sacks before Von got there, but Obo Okoronkwo was a big part of that. We let him go for a comp pick. He signed with Houston. So kind of down to the bare bones there. Leonard Floyd on one side is a lock. And then, some other guys that we have a lot of confidence in, Justin Hollins, Terrell Lewis, Chris Garrett, et cetera. But inside linebacker, obviously a big upgrade. I mean, that was our worst position by far last year. Troy Reeder was a disaster. Everybody ate him alive. And you guys,
every time we played you guys, that's where we attacked, whether in the run game or pass game. Like it was that position it was every single time.
And then to top it off, our rookie deal guy, or our rookie was actually a first-year rookie, Ernest Jones, did a great job, but he was hurt a lot. And so Trayvon Howard stepped in and did a good job. We signed him on he was an exclusive rights free agent. But that's pulling in Wagner was a huge deal there for us. Cornerback, lost Darius Williams, haven't signed anybody. Have another guy that got a ton of playing time, Dante Dion. He's still an unsigned free agent. Now I'm hoping he comes back. We don't know. I haven't heard a lot about him. So we have Jalen Ramsey and who knows, Robert Rochelle, right. David Long. We'll see, right? I expect a the interior offensive line and the cornerback position to be key, key focuses of our, third and fourth round picks, fifth round picks, right?
I love it, man.
Safety is just, the same guys from Jordan Fuller, Taylor Rapp, Nick Scott, again, a bunch of guys on rookie deals that are balling out, with a deep bench, Terrell Burgess and some others. So, so there's a couple of holes. I don't think we got better, like per se, at any position except for inside linebacker, which is a big one. But we did take a step back on the offensive line and at cornerback, and those need to be addressed.
I think it's, I went through every single NFC West team and contracts lost and contracts brought in.
Yeah.
All 4 NFC West teams were graded negative. The entire division, it got worse. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. Seattle, by far, I think they got worse out of any team in the entire NFL. They have just completely and I'll be honest with you, nothing makes me happier because the Seattle Seahawks have owned the 49ers since Russell Wilson's arrived. So, like me, in the back of my mind, I'm like, ooh, that's like 2 extra divisional wins. And again, I know I'm counting my chickens before they hatch, but like that's the excitement level. You guys have played Seattle relatively well. You're not like us.
Yeah, but we were owned by a different team in the division. I wonder who that was.
I love it. I love it.
But the just going back to this, obviously this is pre-draft, and whereas even though the Rams don't have a first or a second rounder, and this really late 102 3-digit third rounder, there's still a lot of reliance on that, as I kind of just went over. So. It's still early. There's still a lot of free agent activity to take place. And I'm not, people say, well, the Rams get better or worse, or did, any of these teams, it's not over yet. And I do expect that the Rams will come out of this going into camp and going into the preseason with a roster that was as strong or stronger than last year. So while right now, as it sits, it isn't, and there's some holes to fill, I think they will fill them, and not just through the draft, but through other free agent signings, maybe some trades and so forth.
I like it. Steven asked this question. He says, John, do you think it'll be the Niners Rams in the next season NFC Championship again? I want it to be that. I want to play you guys 3 times a year. I live in Los Angeles, and so it's my backyard as well, which is fun. But I could say this. If we're looking at NFC power rankings, I have a very difficult time putting anybody ahead of either the Rams or the 49ers. Do you agree, Tom?
I agree. I agree. I think that, Tom Brady comes back, and all of a sudden this team that was completely out of it is now all of a sudden top contender again. And, they lost a lot of guys, and I know they brought back some of those, some of them when Tom Brady came back and whatnot. But anyway, I'm not sold on them. Green Bay, I mean, you guys took them down when they had, their receiving core intact, and now they don't. Who knows how motivated Aaron Rodgers is going to be. So I think the NFC is certainly wide open. You said pick 2 teams that are going to be in the NFC Championship, I think it's the Rams and the Niners. So I agree with your guy.
And now we got to play the games, and that's going to be the fun thing. Now, who do you want that home opener to be? You guys were the Super Bowl winners, so you get that Thursday home opener. You've seen the schedule. Is there a team that kind of sticks out to you that you really, because it's been mentioned that, hey, it could be the Niners getting that Thursday game in LA, but is there another team that you're like, ooh, I really hope they bring this one for the season opener?
Yeah. I think they could feature some of those. They could feature some of those AFC West, NFC West games. I think there's a lot of really attractive games in there, and they would love nothing more than to lead off the year featuring the 2 best divisions in the each of the different conferences. The AFC West is obviously stacked, and they're who we get to play as the NFC. We all get to play all of them once. So you guys get to see Russ again. Your old buddy.
We can't get rid of him, man. We can't get rid of him.
So maybe the Chargers. I don't know. I mean, the Rams, Chargers. I don't know.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun. The Chargers are one of my favorite, and they are. I say this every year. I feel like one of just like they seem primed to make a decent run, and then of course their whole division just goes ham in the offseason and bringing in all these crazy people and whatever else. But yeah, the AFC West. Now I have felt for probably the past 2 to 3 years, the NFC West was the prominent division in the NFL. I don't think we could say that anymore. And the fact that we get to play them. All those games, that's going to make it even more fun. So we're going to get
they're
to
just top to bottom, right? We have
Yeah.
Seattle, and I still think Arizona will show up, but
especially early in the season.
Especially in the season, and people think they fold. It's not what happens. They just don't have depth. I mean, I think your guy earlier asked about that in terms of what happens when people get hurt or whatever. Well, the Rams have always had depth. They had fantastic depth last year. A lot of guys stepped up, and even in the Super Bowl, you saw it. We had our fourth string tight end, caught 4 passes. Fourth string guy, right? So there was a lot of obviously there was the COVID stuff and a lot of injuries, but with Arizona, they just get a few injuries and it is over. I mean, you lose Hopkins. And they lost a couple of their cornerbacks, and it was curtains. I mean, they had nobody behind them, and it's Kyler Murray or bust, and that's why he got so frustrated. But yeah, they just don't have the depth. So if they stay healthy, I think they'll be contenders. But Seattle's a mess, and we did that roundtable with you. I think you came on as our San Francisco.
That was
guy.
A fun episode. And real quick, can you let I apologize, I didn't do this very well. Can you let everybody know where they can find your stuff, because you put out some great stuff?
Yeah. It's Rams Up, LA Rams Up podcast. And I find it on all the podcast stations. And I'm on, it's actually Mark Burns' podcast. I'm on there a lot with him, sort of a de facto co-host. But we do a lot of stuff. We did the roundtable with you of the 49ers. And then we also did one with Arizona and with Seattle. So we covered those as well, 3 days in a row. I think they dropped last week. And so yeah, really good stuff. And a really in-depth look at our entire NFC West. And I think we all ought to do more of that, right? We play each other and we get into our little bubbles, but having these kinds of conversations, I just love it.
Yeah, I think it's beneficial because we get the outside looking in, but with the amount of time that I spend on the 49ers roster and film and stats and all those things, you just develop an appreciation and a knowledge of these things. And, talking with you, Tom, like, again, I've learned things. Like I don't like the things I've learned, I'll be honest, but I have learned things. So one more question and I asked you this earlier, but I left your podcast thinking, I don't know. And so I wanted to rephrase this question. Your head coach, Sean McVay, he's incredible. By far one of the best, if not, he's one of the best coaches in the NFL. I think everybody would agree with that. Would you put the over
disciple of sorry to interrupt, but a disciple of obviously comes right off of your guy, right? And until the championship game, your guy, it was mentor own disciple. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. You want to interrupt and praise Kyle Shanahan, you do that anytime. Now, would you put the over under on 4 years, less or more? If you had to bet, how long will Sean McVay stay the head coach for the Los Angeles Rams?
Well, I will answer a question with a question.
Oh, a philosopher.
How long? Well, it's a dead giveaway. How long will Matthew Stafford be our quarterback? I think I peg Sean McVay. He'll be there as long as Stafford is. Those guys see eye to eye and love each other and love, coaching each other. Obviously, Cup's going to be around. Donald signing a new deal. So there's these key players that'll be there, but Stafford's the key. I mean, the pain that he went through trying to coach a team quarterback by Jared Goff, he would have quit if he hadn't got another quarterback. I honestly believe he wouldn't do it anymore, and he would have gone straight to the booth. It was no fun for him at all. He's having a blast now, and that's why he stayed. He would have got paid a lot more money, and he stayed. So he stayed because he loves it, and he's having a great time. And I think the Rams, I think his fate is tied to Stafford. So if Stafford's around another 5 years or something like that, he just signed his deal for I think for 4, maybe 5. But how those deals get redone. But I think that's the answer to your question. I think he will leave a lot earlier than your average head coach. He's not going to be Bill Belichick or Andy Reid or John Harbaugh, one of these guys sticking around forever. I think he'll hit the booth at an early age, but he'll be around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the past you would have to be fired and then you would get a broadcasting job as like a backup, right?
Yeah.
Like, I got to do something. Now the broadcasting pay with the TV revenue has gone through the roof. Thanks a lot, Tony Romo. And now like they're poaching prominent top coaches out of the league. We almost lost our GM. Right. So John Lynch almost went back, which I think eventually that's where he's going to be. But, he said he wants to win a Super Bowl and then we'll see what happens. It's a weird, interesting time because there's so much money in this sport, which is a good thing. And yeah, man, this has been an absolute blast, Tom. You're such a chill person to talk to. I appreciate your nuanced perspectives and not just blatant homerism, which I'm probably much more guilty of than you are. So sorry about that. But if you go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah. So I just was actually curious if it just quickly, it's kind of, I went through those high leverage positions and low leverage positions. Obviously, I was just trying to think of the 49ers side of it. And if, like at linebacker, just signed a huge deal, right? And some of these positions that the Rams have, very little value for, the Niners seem to have some more value for. I would
argue that they value leadership and they value developed talent. So if you look at like lesser positions, whether that's tight end or linebacker or fullback, right? Which fullback is a little bit of an outlier in this answer, but Fred Warner was a 3rd-round pick. George Kittle was a 5th-round pick. They played to the top of their position and were able to extend them while in their rookie deals. Now, I would probably argue, I'm not sure another extension, how that's going to play out because of the cap numbers and all those things. 49ers have no cap space as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is on this roster. But it is interesting because the draft capital would say they don't value those positions at all. I mean, Aziz, he was a undrafted free agent. He's played up to he's played incredibly. Dre Greenlaw, 6th-round draft pick, but maybe a 5th round. I don't want to be wrong on that. But yeah, it's interesting because the culture that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have created has been a very pro locker room, very pro team friendly, player friendly. Like it's very people want to come play there, not as much as LA probably, but much more so than other teams around the league. Now, the issue is with Debo, they set the precedent that they extend players in camp, and that's what they're going to do. And John Lynch has been out there saying over and over and over again, yeah, we budgeted it for them. We have it in the books. We're going to plan this. But then sometimes you get players that are just impatient and doing all that other stuff. And so we'll have to see. This is a new one because we didn't have this with Kittle. We didn't have this with Warner. We didn't have this with Trent Williams. We didn't have this with those players. So it is a little bit different. I do agree with you there.
Yeah, he obviously has he has an agent that has been cashing in on these wide receivers, and he's putting himself out there at risk, Jim. I mean, this is a guy who probably needs to get a solid contract going into this season, given how much the Shanahan puts him through coming out of the backfield and taking on. I mean, he's not taking on. He's great at taking on quarterbacks at safeties. A lot of wide receiver, big studly wide receivers are, but he has to take on linebackers and defensive linemen and edges, and he has to get through all of them. And he does a great job at it. Obviously, I mean, he's certainly blew up our linebackers. That was embarrassing, but no, he's putting himself at risk, and so I can see why he wants to get paid.
Right. And he deserves it. He'll get paid. He's got to sign with the Niners. All this stuff we'll laugh about later on, but the Niners have their way of doing things. And, the one time they've been, all right, we're going to move away from this was the DeForest Buckner trade.
Right.
And, probably something that our fans don't want to hear is DeForest Buckner was incredible. By far one of my favorite players that's ever worn the 49ers uniform, is that he had deficiencies in the run game. And that was a major issue that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said, we want to get better versus the run. And so that's why that trade took place. And whether that was a successful trade or not, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. It's a different conversation. Yeah. I mean, it's just the strategy. And I think the Niners in looking at how the Rams stack up in terms of making use, getting quality snaps out of rookie deal guys, they're by far and away, lead the league in that category, and it's out of necessity and design. But the Niners are right there. The Niners had, I think, 7 guys, if I remember, that had more than on rookie deals that had more than 50% of the snaps. That's
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of guys. It was Brunskill, he was out there in every play, right? And Fred Warner, Ayuk, Bosa, Debo, Alshire, and Mosley. So and then a couple other guys, Mitchell and McGlinchey, that were in the 40s. So a lot of guys. You got a lot of young guys contributing as well. So the difference is probably that we're intentionally don't resign most of our rookie deal guys because we have to rinse and repeat. We get the comp pick, go back to the draft because we can't pay them. We just can't pay those guys because we're so top heavy. So it's out of design. It's not out of desire. We would love to have kept Joseph Day or some of these guys, right? But we just can't afford to pay them middle tier money. It's just not in the when you're paying Ramsey and Donald and Kupp and Stafford and so forth and so on. So I think that's the big difference between the two teams. That you guys get a lot of quality rookies, draft well, and then try to re-sign them, the ones that really work out. And then there's where the Rams intentionally do not re-sign them.
Right. And even like our middle tier guys, like obviously Warner, Kittle, those guys, they're exceptions. But guys like Kerry Hyder or guys like, DJ Jones, we will offer them deals and we'll say, look, we can pay you this, but we don't offer top dollar. So if you're at the top of your position, 49ers are going to pay you. If you're not, we can give you a team-friendly deal here. If not, we get it. Go make your money. And then even with Kerry Hyder, right? Like he has 8.5 sacks with us. We say, sorry, man, here's what we can do. No, he goes and gets paid. He's right back with us the next year. So you sure it's grass is greener other places? You got to check
Seattle.
and make sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Seattle, because we got a comp pick and we got him back on a cheaper deal.
That's right.
And I wanted him to be successful, just not for Seattle. Anyway,
that's right. So it's going to be a great year. Let's continue the conversation as things come up. And it's been great. Thanks for having me.
I love it, Tom, man. Awesome. Again, go follow this guy on Twitter at RamsBeat if you want to have legit conversations between rivals. And that's what it's all about, growing the community and being respectful of each other and learning. Man, if you just stop and listen, we can all learn some stuff, man, and respect each other. So, Tom, thank you. Really appreciate your time, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
All right.
That was John Chapman of the 49ers Rush podcast and Tom Courts, a regular guest on this show. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. These discussions are just extremely interesting, comparing and contrasting the way these two franchises operate. They learn a little bit more about us. We learn a little bit more about them. All good stuff. Nice to have friends across the NFC West. We're going to have another drop later this week, some insight on the draft from a special guest. And next week, of course, look for our draft roundtable. Tom Courts, Paul Walia, and myself discussing the draft from the Rams' perspective primarily. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can reach us at ramsuppodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website at ramsup.com. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It's really appreciated. And one last thank you to John Chapman. Thank you for providing this content for our listeners. And lastly, remember, keep the horns up, stay safe, and have fun out there.
Music courtesy of bensound.com and the YouTube royalty-free music audio library, Crimson Fly by Humma Humma.